Have you ever felt drained by someone in your life, even though they didn't mean to harm you? Maybe it's a friend, a family member, or even a colleague who, little by little, saps your energy. Their words or actions seem harmless at first, but over time, they chip away at your peace. It's like a slow, quiet erosion of your spirit, something you can't always explain, but you can definitely feel in Buddhist teachings. Attachment isn't just about things, it's also about the people we keep close. The Buddha taught that attachment is the root of suffering, and when we hold on to relationships that drain us, we unknowingly invite that suffering into our lives. But how do we protect our peace without cutting people off in anger or resentment? How do we set boundaries gracefully and without confrontation? Today, we dive into the Buddhist wisdom that can help you do just that. Silent boundaries, the art of cutting off toxic people quietly and respectfully. In this video, we'll uncover the 5 types of people that wise women protect themselves from. With clarity and self-awareness, we'll explore how to preserve your inner peace and grow stronger, not in spite of, but because of, the relationships you choose to keep. Let's begin this journey of finding true peace through mindful boundaries. 1. The underminer, the silent erosion of joy. Have you ever had a moment where someone, perhaps unknowingly, took the wind out of your sails? It may not have been a direct insult or a harsh comment, but more like a small pebble thrown into the calm water of your confidence. At first, it may seem trivial. Maybe it's a well-meaning friend or a family member who, while offering a compliment, slips in something that just doesn't sit right. Take Sarah, for instance. She had been working tirelessly on a project that she was incredibly proud of, an idea she had nurtured for months. When she finally shared the news with a close colleague, excited about the progress she had made, her colleague smiled and said, "Wow, that's amazing, but I could never handle that kind of pressure. I don't know how you do it." Sarah smiled back, but deep down something didn't feel right. Why would the person she trusted imply that managing stress was something beyond her? A few days later, Sarah mentioned to her family that she had started therapy, and her sister responded, "Good for you. I've heard therapy can really help, but I've never needed it." At that moment, Sarah couldn't help but feel small. It wasn't a direct critique, but there it was, the subtle undermining. At first, Sarah brushed it off, telling herself, "I'm probably overthinking it. They didn't mean it like that." But deep inside, she couldn't shake the feeling that, one small comment after another, her confidence was slowly leaking away. This is exactly what Buddhist teachings caution us to be mindful of. The Buddha said, "What we think, we become. Our thoughts shape our reality, and even the smallest negative comments can quietly chip away at our peace. What seems like harmless banter can have a far deeper impact." This is why the Buddha encouraged us to be aware of our emotions, to observe how we feel in the presence of others, and recognize when something, no matter how subtle, is affecting us. Just like Sarah, we all face these quiet erosions of joy. The underminer doesn't shout their disapproval. Instead, they use well-meaning words that slowly deflate us. The more subtle the attack, the harder it is to identify. It's like being pricked by 1,000 tiny thorns that over time make us bleed without us even realizing it. Wise women understand this dynamic deeply. They don't allow themselves to be swayed by every passing comment. Instead, they cultivate awareness, being attuned to how their energy shifts in response to the words and actions of others. When they sense their confidence being drained, they don't feel the need to confront the underminer directly. Instead, they step back. They stop sharing their wins with people who can't celebrate them fully. They protect their dreams and their energy, choosing to surround themselves with people who uplift them. This is not a harsh act. It's not about rejecting others out of spite or resentment. It's an act of self-care, rooted in the loving kindness the Buddha speaks of. The wise woman doesn't waste energy on trying to decode every word. She simply recognizes what is draining her and quietly removes herself from that environment. In silence, she guards her peace and protects the joy she has worked so hard to build. And as she does this, she realizes that this silence isn't weakness, it's strength. It's a recognition of self-respect. Just as the Buddha sat in serene silence amidst the chaos of the world, so too can we create our own space of quiet strength, shielding our hearts from the subtle erosion of negativity. 2. The chronic taker. Understanding the balance of giving and receiving. Imagine this scenario. Emily, a kind-hearted woman, had always been the person people turned to in times of need. It started small. Her friends would reach out for advice, ask for a little help here and there. At first, she felt honored to be the one they trusted. It felt good to lend a hand, to offer her wisdom, or just be there when someone needed an ear. But little by little, she noticed the requests coming more frequently, and they began to feel more like demands. First, it was a late-night phone call, a simple conversation. "I'm having a rough week," her friend Sarah said. "Can you talk for a minute?" Emily, always ready to listen, stayed up late and offered her advice. It wasn't a big deal, just a friend in need. But as the weeks went on, the calls became longer, the favors bigger. "I need you to help me move this weekend," Sarah asked. "Can you take me to the doctor tomorrow?" It felt like every time Emily looked at her phone, there was another request from Sarah. At first, Emily didn't mind. She loved being there for her friend. But soon she began to notice something unsettling. Sarah wasn't the one checking in on her. When Emily needed a bit of support, Sarah was nowhere to be found. It wasn't that Sarah was mean or deliberately ignoring her. It's that she had become the chronic taker, the kind of person who asks for help without ever considering the balance of giving and receiving. Buddhism teaches us about the middle way, the path of moderation. It's about balance, not extremes. The Buddha understood that giving too much without receiving can lead to suffering. Emily's experience with Sarah was the perfect example. Over time, Emily began to feel emotionally drained. She was giving, but receiving nothing in return. She started to feel like she was pouring from an empty cup, exhausted, worn out, and with nothing left to give. Wise women, like those who walk the path of mindfulness, recognize this imbalance early. They don't wait until they are completely drained. They understand that true love and compassion are not about giving to the point of self-sacrifice. Instead, they give from a place of abundance, not out of guilt or obligation. Emily, in the spirit of Buddhist wisdom, began to notice the subtle signs of this imbalance, how she felt after spending time with Sarah. Instead of feeling uplifted, she felt depleted, as though her own needs were pushed aside. One day, after another late-night conversation, Emily sat quietly in her living room, reflecting. She realized she had been operating in transactional mode, a relationship where one person gives all and the other takes all. This wasn't what friendship should feel like. This wasn't mutual, and that's when she understood it was time to set boundaries, not out of anger or frustration, but out of deep self-respect. With clarity, she decided to gently step back. She would still be there for Sarah, but she stopped answering every call immediately. She stopped over-explaining herself and started to prioritize her own needs, something she hadn't done in a long time. She didn't need to justify her boundaries or feel guilty about taking care of herself. After all, Buddhism teaches us that self-care is essential for our well-being. Just as a cup cannot pour from an empty space, neither can we truly love or help others when we are running on empty. As Emily began to fill her own cup again, she found peace. She realized that stepping back wasn't abandoning Sarah. It was simply taking care of her own heart. She began to surround herself with relationships where the giving and receiving of energy was balanced. This was a quiet act of self-love, the kind of love that Buddhism teaches is necessary for all of us. In silence, she reclaimed her energy, and her relationships began to shift. She was able to give, not because she had to, but because she wanted to, and that, she realized, was the true gift. In the end, Emily learned that the most loving thing she could do for herself and others was to recognize the imbalance and take a step back. She knew that true compassion starts with self-compassion, and only by nurturing herself could she continue to offer her love to others, not from exhaustion, but from a place of strength and clarity. 3. The trust breaker. Guarding your heart with mindfulness. There are moments in life when someone you trust deeply, someone who has been a part of your world for years, does something that shifts the very foundation of your connection with them. It isn't always dramatic. In fact, it's often the smallest betrayal that leaves the deepest scars. Take the story of Maria, for example. She had a close friend, Lisa, someone she confided in about her most personal struggles. Maria, like many of us, had a tendency to wear her heart on her sleeve. She shared her fears, her insecurities, and her hopes for the future, trusting that Lisa would hold these vulnerable pieces of herself with care. But one day, during a gathering with mutual friends, Maria overheard Lisa recounting something Maria had shared in confidence, only this time it was twisted. Lisa had made a joke at Maria's expense, turning a deeply personal moment into a punchline. At first, Maria laughed along, brushing it off as a harmless comment, but deep inside she felt the knot in her stomach tighten. There it was, that quiet, insidious feeling of betrayal creeping into her heart like a shadow. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened. Maria had heard bits and pieces of her private life floating around, shared by Lisa with others. Perhaps it was just a misunderstanding, Maria told herself. She was probably overreacting. But that uncomfortable sensation, that tightness in her chest, told her a different story. Her body knew what her mind was trying to deny. Trust had been broken. Buddhism teaches us that trust is not built in grand gestures, but in the smallest, most subtle moments. The Buddha referred to these moments as sliding door moments. Those times when a person has the chance to either turn toward you or away from you. Trust isn't something that can be simply given. It must be earned repeatedly through consistent care, respect, and consideration. It is woven together over time, thread by thread, and when it's broken, it leaves a hole that can't be easily mended. Maria, in her moment of clarity, understood the Buddha's teachings deeply. She realized that confronting Lisa wasn't the answer. There was no need for a dramatic showdown or an angry confrontation. Instead, the wise woman knows that the best way to respond to a betrayal is with distance. In that distance, there is power. When trust is compromised, actions speak louder than words. Distance doesn't mean abandonment or cruelty. It is an act of self-protection, an act of love for oneself. Maria understood that she couldn't afford to expose her heart to someone who repeatedly made her feel unsafe. So without confrontation, Maria began to create space. She didn't cut Lisa off entirely, but she became more mindful of what she shared, more discerning about the moments she entrusted her vulnerability to her friend. This wasn't an act of punishment, it was an act of peace. Maria began to protect her heart by setting clear boundaries, allowing herself the space to heal and rebuild the trust she had lost. It wasn't about holding on to anger or resentment. It was about creating a sanctuary for her own emotions. In this quiet withdrawal, Maria found her peace. She realized that true trust is built over time, and when it is violated, the most loving thing she could do for herself was to guard her heart with mindfulness. Just as the Buddha sat in quiet meditation, turning inward to cultivate inner peace, Maria learned to protect her emotional well-being by turning inward, focusing on her healing. Through this process, Maria's understanding deepened. She didn't need to confront the person who had betrayed her. She didn't need to demand an apology. She simply needed to trust her own intuition and allow distance to do the work for her. She learned that self-respect often comes in the form of silent boundaries, and in those boundaries, there is not just protection, but strength. The Buddha's teachings had shown her the way. By protecting her peace, she was reclaiming her power. 4. The drama magnet. Letting go of chaos. Sophie was the kind of person who had always been there for her friends, a reliable source of calm in the storm. When her friend Rachel entered her life, Sophie saw someone who seemed to constantly face turmoil. Relationships were always a mess, work was always overwhelming, and every week there was some new crisis that needed immediate attention. At first, Sophie felt drawn to help. Rachel seemed to be in real pain, and Sophie wanted to offer support. She believed that by listening, offering advice, and providing comfort, she could help her friend weather the storm. But as weeks turned into months, Sophie began to notice something unsettling. Rachel's chaos never seemed to end. It was like a series of never-ending storms that Sophie was expected to be the calm in. Every phone call, every conversation began with, "You won't believe what happened today." Sophie found herself caught up in Rachel's drama, trying to fix problems that couldn't be fixed, offering solutions that were never embraced. It wasn't long before Sophie began to feel emotionally drained, as though the storms were starting to consume her own peace. What started as an attempt to help had slowly turned into a cycle of emotional exhaustion. Buddhism teaches us that our minds are like gardens. If we let weeds, negative thoughts and energy grow, they will eventually take over, suffocating the beautiful flowers that once thrived. In Sophie's case, Rachel had become one of those weeds, constantly demanding attention, creating emotional turmoil that pulled Sophie into a never-ending cycle of chaos. Like a garden overrun with thorns, Sophie's peace was being crowded out, and she was losing her ability to maintain balance in her own life. One evening, after yet another late-night conversation with Rachel about a fresh crisis, Sophie found herself lying awake, her mind racing with thoughts of how to help her friend. It was then that she realized the truth she had been avoiding. No matter how much she tried to help, Rachel's problems were never going to end. It was like trying to calm a storm that never stopped. The chaos wasn't just in Rachel's life. It was spilling over into Sophie's. Sophie, being the wise woman that she was, remembered the Buddha's teachings on mindfulness. The Buddha spoke of the importance of protecting our inner peace and not allowing ourselves to become consumed by the storms of others. Sophie recognized that her peace was just as precious as her friends, and if she continued to pour all her energy into Rachel's drama, she would soon have nothing left to give, not just to Rachel but to herself and the relationships that truly nourished her. So Sophie did something that at first felt difficult, but ultimately saved her. She created distance, not out of anger or resentment, but out of self-respect. She stopped answering every text immediately, stopped jumping into every crisis with solutions that Rachel wasn't ready to hear. Sophie didn't owe Rachel an explanation. She simply acknowledged that she needed to protect her own emotional space. This wasn't abandoning Rachel, This was Sophie taking the time to tend to her own garden, to clear the weeds and allow the flowers of her own life to bloom once more. In the days that followed, Sophie noticed something remarkable. Her mind, once clouded with the weight of Rachel's constant crises, began to clear. She felt more grounded, more in control of her own energy. By stepping back, Sophie was able to preserve her inner calm and emotional well-being. She understood now that being the calm in someone else's storm wasn't her responsibility, especially when that storm was endless and unchanging. The wise woman knows that self-care isn't selfish, it's essential. Sophie had learned that to love others fully, she first had to preserve her own peace. The energy she had once spent trying to fix Rachel's problems could now be channeled into relationships built on mutual respect, where support was given and received in balance. Sophie's garden was blooming once again, and this time the weeds of chaos had no place in it. By recognizing when to step back and create distance, Sophie learned that protecting her peace wasn't a passive act. It was an act of strength. And in doing so, she found that her relationships, those based on mutual respect and understanding, began to flourish once more. 5. The subtle competitor. Letting go of comparison, Maya had always been the one to share her achievements with her closest friend, Emma. They'd been friends since childhood, and for the most part, Maya had always felt that Emma was her biggest supporter. Whenever Maya accomplished something, whether it was a promotion at work, completing a challenging project, or even just hitting a personal milestone, Emma would be there to celebrate with her, or so Maya thought. But one day, after Maya shared the news of her recent promotion, Emma's response was anything but warm. Instead of the excitement Maya expected, Emma's voice carried an edge. "Must be nice," she said, with a tight smile. At first, Maya thought she was just imagining things. After all, Emma had always been so encouraging before. But over time, Maya started to notice the pattern. Whenever she shared her successes, Emma would somehow twist the conversation into a comparison, whether it was about her own accomplishments, or more often than not, about things Emma felt she hadn't achieved. "Well, I've been trying to get a promotion too, but it's just harder for me," Emma would say after Maya mentioned her achievements. "I guess I'll just never get there." The words, wrapped in a false humility, stung with the quiet tension of competition. Maya could feel it, a subtle but unmistakable shift in the energy between them. It was as though her success made Emma uncomfortable. Instead of celebrating with Maya, Emma seemed to take a step back, quietly judging, perhaps even feeling threatened by Maya's progress. In Buddhism, we are taught the practice of mudita, the genuine, unselfish joy in the success and happiness of others. The Buddha's teachings remind us that true friendship is about mutual support, not comparison. In a real friendship, there's room for both people to thrive without one feeling diminished by the other's accomplishments. But with the subtle competitor, Maya felt the opposite. Every victory of hers seemed to highlight a perceived failure in Emma. And soon, that subtle tension became more apparent, affecting their relationship. Maya, like a wise woman, began to recognize this dynamic. She knew that true friendship should feel expansive and freeing, not constrained by comparison. It should provide space for both people to celebrate each other's success, to grow side by side without the feeling of competition looming overhead. She realized that when Emma's reactions were laced with comparison, it wasn't a reflection of her success, it was a reflection of Emma's insecurities. The Buddha often spoke of the importance of protecting one's own peace and growth. Maya understood that she didn't need to confront Emma to make her point. Instead, she quietly began to step back. She started sharing less of her big victories with Emma. She noticed the shift in their conversations, and rather than pushing harder to force Emma to celebrate her success, she respected the space between them. Maya wasn't angry or resentful toward Emma. She simply chose to protect her accomplishments. She chose to share them with people who could celebrate her growth without comparing it to their own. This wasn't about shutting Emma out. It was about making room for her own happiness and success, free from the weight of subtle competition. Maya's wisdom came from the understanding that when you share your joy with someone who cannot share in it without comparison, your joy is no longer pure. It's tainted, strained by the energy of competition. And Maya, in honoring her own growth, chose to nurture relationships that were based on mutual respect and support, not hidden rivalries. Through this process, Maya learned that protecting her growth wasn't a sign of selfishness or exclusion. It was an act of self-love and respect. By letting go of the subtle competitor, she created space for her own success to shine brightly, untarnished by comparison. Maya realized that her path was unique, and she no longer needed to shrink herself or share less of her achievements to make others feel comfortable. True success comes from within, and it should never be measured by how others perceive it. In the end, Maya's success didn't diminish Emma. In fact, by stepping away from the unspoken competition, Maya was able to create a healthier distance that allowed Emma too to find her own sense of success, free from comparison. Just as the Buddha teaches, when we celebrate others' achievements with pure joy, we not only honor them but also honor ourselves in the process. Conclusion. As we look back on the 5 types of people we've discussed, underminers, chronic takers, trust breakers, drama magnets, and subtle competitors, we uncover a fundamental truth: the need to protect our inner peace. In the journey of life, we often encounter people who unintentionally or even intentionally drain our energy and cloud our sense of clarity. Yet, the Buddha's teachings remind us that self-care is not selfish. It is a necessary practice for our well-being, growth, and spiritual peace. Relationships, according to the Buddha, should nourish us, help us evolve, and bring us joy, not drain us of what makes us whole. Wise women recognize this truth. They know the importance of setting silent boundaries, of quietly stepping away from relationships that threaten their peace, their growth, and their happiness. This is not an act of cruelty or rejection. It is an act of self-respect. Wise women understand that, just as we protect our physical health, we must also protect our emotional and spiritual health. Sometimes that means letting go, not out of anger or resentment, but out of clarity and mindfulness. By practicing mindfulness and self-awareness, wise women create the space necessary for healthier, more fulfilling relationships. They understand that their energy is a precious resource, and they choose to invest it in relationships that uplift them, rather than those that diminish their light. Letting go doesn't mean wishing harm on others. It means wishing for peace, for ourselves, and for the relationships that bring us genuine joy and fulfillment. So as we move forward in life, may we all embrace the wisdom of the Buddha's teachings. May we learn when to hold on and when to let go, when to give and when to protect our peace. By setting clear, silent boundaries, we create the space needed for growth, love, and inner tranquility. Let go of what no longer serves you and allow your life to be filled with the relationships that truly nourish your soul. If this video resonated with you, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and join us on this journey of mindfulness and self-discovery. Let's walk this path together, cultivating peace, clarity, and compassion in every aspect of our lives. Thank you for being here with us, and may you find the strength and wisdom to protect your peace.